Picture the English countryside with its rolling green hills, patchwork fields, and quiet, sleepy villages. It's a landscape that feels timeless, a place where history seems to sleep just beneath the surface. Now, imagine looking down from high above, not with your own eyes, but through the powerful lens of a satellite orbiting the Earth. From that incredible vantage point, something miraculous happens. The familiar fields begin to transform, revealing ghostly outlines, geometric patterns, and the faint but unmistakable footprints of sprawling buildings hidden just beneath the soil. These are the lost Roman villas of Britain, silent for centuries, now whispering their secrets to the sky thanks to one of the most exciting fields of modern science, satellite archaeology. This isn't science fiction, it's a real-life treasure hunt, a technological revolution that is completely rewriting our understanding of Roman Britain without a single shovel breaking the ground. For generations, our knowledge of the Romans in Britain was largely pieced together from what we could physically dig up. A mosaic floor discovered by a farmer plowing his field, the fragment of a wall uncovered during a construction project. These finds were often matters of chance. But now, we have a key to see the invisible. Satellite archaeology allows us to peer directly through the Earth, detecting subtle differences in soil moisture and plant growth that betray the presence of ancient stone foundations, drainage ditches, and long filled-in post holes. What looks like an ordinary wheat field from the ground becomes, from space, a detailed floor plan of a luxurious Roman villa, complete with rooms, courtyards, and bathing facilities. It's like having X-ray vision for an entire country, revealing a hidden world that has been lying in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to be rediscovered. This journey we're about to take together is more than just a look at old ruins. It's a story of human ingenuity, both ancient and modern. We're going to explore how this incredible technology works, revealing the sheer scale of the Roman footprint on Britain in a way that was unimaginable just a few decades ago. We'll uncover the stories of the people who lived in these grand villas and understand how this new perspective is solving long-standing historical mysteries. So, get ready to change the way you see the landscape of Britain forever. We are lifting the veil on a lost Roman province, one pixel at a time, and discovering a history far richer and more complex than we ever knew. So how does this modern-day magic actually work? At its heart, satellite archaeology is a form of remote sensing, a way of gathering information about an object or area from a distance. Think of it like giving the landscape a medical scan, just as an MRI can see beneath your skin to reveal the structure of bones and tissues. Specialized sensors on satellites, aircraft, and drones can detect minute variations on and below the Earth's surface that are completely invisible to the human eye. These tools don't see the past directly, of course. Instead, they read the lingering signature that ancient human activity has left upon the land. When a massive Roman villa is built, its stone foundations, drainage ditches, and pits alter the very earth it sits on. These changes persist for millennia, affecting how water drains, how deeply plant roots can grow, and the mineral content of the soil. It's this enduring environmental memory that the technology is designed to uncover. One of the most powerful tools in this field is LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Imagine flying over a dense, leafy forest with a laser scanner. The LiDAR system fires millions of rapid laser pulses at the ground. These pulses penetrate small gaps in the foliage, bounce off the solid ground below, and return to the sensor. By precisely measuring the time it takes for each pulse to return, a computer can create an incredibly detailed, three-dimensional map of the bare earth, effectively digitally stripping away every single tree, bush, and blade of grass. What's left is the true shape of the ground, revealing the subtle bumps, mounds, and depressions that signal ancient walls, roads, and burial mounds. In heavily wooded areas of Britain, where traditional aerial photography is useless, LiDAR has uncovered entire lost landscapes, from Iron Age hill forts to Roman farmsteads that were completely unknown just a few years ago. But LiDAR is only half the story. Another crucial technique is multispectral imaging. While our eyes see only visible light, these specialized cameras capture data from a much wider spectrum of light, including near-infrared and thermal wavelengths. This allows them to see the health of plants in a way we never could. Here's the principle in action. A crop growing over the deep, nutrient-rich soil of an ancient ditch will be taller, lusher, and greener. Conversely, plants struggling to grow over a buried stone wall will be stunted and stressed. From the ground, this difference might be imperceptible, but from space, these patterns form stark, geometric lines and shapes known as crop marks. During a dry summer, when vegetation is under stress, these hidden blueprints of history can appear with breathtaking clarity, showing the outline of a villa's courtyard or the curve of a temple's wall as if drawn onto the field itself. It's a direct glimpse into the architectural soul of a place, a ghostly impression left not by spirits, but by physics and biology, waiting centuries for the right technology to give it a voice. To truly grasp the significance of these ghostly outlines appearing in our fields, we need to step back in time and understand the monumental project the Romans undertook here. This story begins in the year 43 AD, when Emperor Claudius, seeking a military triumph to solidify his somewhat shaky hold on power, launched a full-scale invasion across the English Channel. The Roman legions that landed on the shores of Kent were not just a raiding party, they were the vanguard of a systematic, determined conquest. Within just a few decades, Roman control had pushed north and west, eventually encompassing most of what is today England and Wales, bounded by formidable defensive lines like Hadrian's Wall in the north. This wasn't a fleeting presence. For nearly 4 centuries, Britain was a province of the Roman Empire, a distant but integral part of a vast, interconnected world that stretched from the deserts of Syria to the rain-swept hills of Britannia. The Roman approach to domination was a masterclass in infrastructure and cultural imposition. They didn't just conquer the land, they reorganized it fundamentally. First and foremost were the military structures, the imposing forts and legionary fortresses established to pacify the native tribes. But the true mark of Rome was the network of cities and towns they built from the ground up. Places like Londinium or London and Eboracum, modern-day York, were founded as administrative and trade hubs, complete with forums, public baths, temples, and grid-patterned streets. Straight, sturdy roads carved through the ancient landscape, connecting these urban centers and allowing for the rapid movement of troops, goods, and ideas. This infrastructure was the skeleton of the province, the means by which Roman law, language, and lifestyle were gradually disseminated across the countryside. But the real economic engine of Roman Britain, and the key to our satellite discoveries, lay in the countryside, the villa. These were not simply large houses. They were sophisticated agricultural estates that functioned as the centers of vast farming enterprises. Think of them as the Roman equivalent of a combination of a corporate farm, a luxury manor house, and a small industrial center. A typical villa complex would have included a sprawling, often luxurious residence for the landowner, complete with mosaic floors, painted plaster walls, and hypocaust systems for central heating. Surrounding this were extensive working areas, barns, granaries, workshops for pottery and metalworking, and quarters for the workers and slaves who managed the land. The wealth of these estates was generated by producing grain, livestock, and other goods, not just for local consumption, but for trade across the empire. This is precisely why satellite archaeology is so revolutionary in this context. For a long time, historians believed that Roman Britain was a largely militarized society with a thin veneer of Roman culture in the town. The discovery of these vast, hidden villas tells a completely different, far richer story. Each new outline revealed from space paints a picture of a profoundly Romanized countryside, a landscape densely dotted with prosperous estates that were fully integrated into the imperial economy. The owner of one of these villas might have been a retired Roman soldier granted land, a wealthy immigrant from Gaul, or a native Briton who had adopted Roman customs to advance his status. Their lives, and the lives of the hundreds of people who worked their land, represented the ultimate success of the Roman project, the transformation of a conquered territory into a productive, tax-generating province that looked, felt, and operated in a distinctly Roman way. So why are we so fixated on finding these villas? Because to call them just fancy houses is like calling a modern industrial farm a nice barn. it completely misses their true purpose and power. A Roman villa was the engine room of the provincial economy. Think of the empire as a massive, complex corporation. The legions were the security force, the towns were the regional offices, but the villas were the production facilities. They were the primary source of the grain, wool, leather, and other raw materials that fed both the local population and the legions stationed on the frontier. The wealth generated from these sprawling estates didn't just buy the family fancy mosaics. It flowed as taxes back to Rome and fueled trade across the empire. Finding a new villa isn't just about adding another pin to a map. It's about locating a vital economic hub, a node in a network that stretched for thousands of miles. Beyond their economic muscle, these villas are unparalleled windows into the social structure of Roman Britain. The architecture itself tells a powerful story of class and status. The main house, with its heated rooms and intricate floor mosaics, speaks to the wealth and Romanized taste of the owner, but the larger complex reveals the entire social pyramid. You had the landowner and his family living in luxury, often a retired legionary officer or a local chieftain who had embraced Roman ways to secure his position. Then, you had a managerial class, perhaps a freedman overseeing the accounts. And finally, there was the vast labor force, slaves, indentured workers, and local peasants who lived and worked in the more humble surrounding buildings. By studying the entire layout from above, we can start to understand the dynamics of this micro-society, how people of vastly different status lived in close proximity, all contributing to the single goal of generating agricultural surplus. This leads us to one of the most profound insights that villa studies provide, the story of integration. For a long time, history was often told as a simple story of Roman conquerors and conquered Britain. The reality revealed by these estates is far more nuanced and fascinating. The person who owned a villa like the ones we're discovering might very well have had a native British name. He wasn't necessarily a Roman from Italy, but rather a local elite who saw the benefits of adopting a Roman lifestyle. He built his house in the Roman style, ate from Roman pottery, and perhaps even Latinized his name to improve his standing with the authorities. This was the ultimate form of conquest, not by the sword, but by assimilation. The villa was a physical manifestation of this cultural shift, a statement that said, "We are part of the Roman world now." It shows us that the province of Britannia wasn't just occupied. It was being transformed from the inside out, with native populations actively participating in and reshaping their own identity within the empire. And finally, these sites are treasure troves of daily life, frozen in time. While grand monuments like Hadrian's Wall tell us about the military machine, and city ruins speak of public life, the villa is a record of the private domestic sphere. The satellite's view gives us the floor plan, the blueprint of existence. The arrangement of rooms shows us how families moved through their homes, where they entertained, where they bathed, and where they slept. The discovery of ancillary buildings point to specialized crafts, perhaps a blacksmith's forge or a pottery kiln on the premises, indicating a level of self-sufficiency and local industry. Every new villa complex mapped from space adds another data point, helping us move beyond the lives of emperors and generals to understand the rhythms of the ordinary people who worked the land, raised families, and made Roman Britain a living, breathing society. It's in these quiet, hidden outlines in the English countryside that we find the true, messy, and vibrant story of an entire civilization. Now, let's focus on one of the most transformative tools in this entire process, LiDAR. To truly appreciate its power, you have to understand it not as a simple camera, but as a kind of superpowered measuring tape that can digitally peel back the layers of time. The acronym stands for Light Detection and Ranging, and the principle is both ingenious and straightforward. A sensor, typically mounted on an aircraft or a satellite, fires an incredibly dense stream of laser pulses, millions of them every second down toward the Earth's surface. Each one of these tiny pulses of light travels at a known speed until it hits an object, a leaf, a branch, the ground, and then bounces back to the sensor. By meticulously calculating the minuscule time difference between the moment a pulse is sent and the moment it returns, a computer can calculate the exact distance to that object with astonishing precision. When you process billions of these individual distance measurements, you can build a staggeringly detailed three-dimensional map of the landscape, a digital elevation model that shows the true shape of the ground beneath all the clutter of modern life. The true magic of LiDAR, especially in a place as verdant and overgrown as the British countryside, is its ability to perform a kind of digital deforestation. In a wooded area, the first laser pulses to return will have hit the canopy of the trees, but many more will filter through small gaps in the leaves, eventually hitting the ground and making the return journey. The software is smart enough to distinguish between these different returns, allowing analysts to filter out all the vegetation and create a bare earth model. What you're left with is a pristine, bald landscape, a contour map of incredible accuracy that reveals every single subtle hump, dip, and ridge. A buried Roman wall, even if it's only a single course of stones deep, will create a slight raised linear bump. A filled-in ditch will appear as a faint, dark depression. From the ground, these features are utterly invisible, lost in the undergrowth or the gentle slopes of a farmer's field. But from the perspective of LiDAR, they stand out with stunning clarity, like ink on parchment. A perfect case study that demonstrates this technological marvel is the discovery of the vast complex at Worthydown in Hampshire. For centuries, this was just another patch of English countryside, with some known Roman remains, but no hint of the true scale of what lay hidden. When archaeologists analyzed LiDAR data of the area, the landscape literally transformed before their eyes. The data revealed the ghostly, but perfectly clear, outline of a massive settlement that sprawled across the hillside. They could see the precise layout of a large, winged corridor villa, the main country house complete with its rooms and porticos. But more astonishingly, the LiDAR showed that this villa was not an isolated structure. It was the heart of a veritable village, surrounded by a network of trackways, boundary ditches, and the footprints of numerous smaller buildings, likely housing for workers, barns, and workshops. This wasn't just a single estate, it was a major economic hub, a bustling community that had been completely erased from view and memory, now resurrected in perfect detail through the silent, persistent rain of laser light from above. While LiDAR strips away the physical clutter of the landscape to reveal its shape, multispectral imaging performs a different kind of magic. It reads the secret language of the plants themselves, translating their health and vigor into a vivid map of what lies beneath. This technique moves far beyond what our human eyes can perceive. We see only a narrow band of light known as the visible spectrum, the familiar rainbow of colors from red to violet. Multispectral cameras, however, are like superhuman eyes that can detect light wavelengths we cannot, such as near-infrared and thermal radiation. This expanded vision allows them to measure the photosynthetic activity and water content of vegetation with incredible precision, turning an ordinary field of wheat or barley into a glowing, data-rich canvas that reveals ancient history. The key to this entire process lies in the concept of crop marks, and these form in two primary ways, almost like a photographic negative and positive of the buried past. First, consider the negative marks. Imagine a buried Roman wall, its stone foundations still resting just a foot or two below the surface. In the soil directly above this wall, the root systems of crops are shallow and stunted, unable to penetrate the solid barrier beneath. These plants struggle for moisture and nutrients, becoming stressed and less vigorous. From above, especially in the near-infrared spectrum where healthy vegetation reflects light very brightly, these struggling plants appear as faint, yellowish or brownish lines against a sea of vibrant red, the ghostly outline of a room, or a boundary wall written in the language of plant stress. Conversely, we have the positive marks, which are often even more dramatic. Now picture a long filled-in Roman ditch or drainage channel. Over centuries, this feature became a deep, linear pit of soft, organic, rich soil that holds moisture far better than the surrounding compacted ground. Plants growing over these ancient ditches have a deep, ready reservoir of water and nutrients. Their roots dive deep, and they grow taller, lusher, and greener than their neighbors. From the air, these plants form dark, emerald green lines against the lighter background of the field. During a dry spell, when the rest of the field is parched and struggling, these positive marks can appear with astonishing clarity, tracing the outline of a grand courtyard, a defensive enclosure, or the winding path of a lost road as if drawn with a neon green highlighter across the landscape. The timing of these revelations is absolutely critical, making multispectral archaeology a discipline of patience and perfect conditions. A farmer surveying his field on a damp, overcast day in spring might see absolutely nothing unusual. The entire landscape is uniformly green and well-watered, but come the height of a dry summer, when the sun beats down for weeks and the crops begin to experience drought stress, the hidden blueprint of the villa beneath suddenly emerges. The plants over the buried walls wilt and yellow first, while those over the nutrient-rich ditches remain robust and green, clinging to their hidden water source. This narrow window of visibility means that archaeologists must carefully plan their aerial surveys or satellite image acquisitions for these precise periods of stress, waiting for the landscape to literally reveal its secrets under the right environmental pressure. It's a fleeting spectacle, a performance put on by the land that is only visible from the perfect vantage point at the perfect moment in time. But the technological symphony doesn't end with the view from space or the air. To truly confirm what those ghostly crop marks and laser-revealed mounds represent, archaeologists bring in a suite of ground-based tools that act like medical scanners for the soil, providing a detailed, close-up diagnosis of the underground world. Two of the most powerful of these are ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry, techniques that allow us to virtually see through the earth with a precision that would seem like science fiction to earlier generations of archaeologists. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, works on a principle similar to sonar, but using radio waves instead of sound. Imagine pushing a lawnmower-like unit across a field, but instead of cutting grass, it's sending a steady stream of high-frequency radio pulses directly down into the ground. These pulses travel through the soil until they hit something with a different density like a stone wall, a tile floor, or the soft, loose fill of a ditch. When that happens, part of the energy bounces back to a receiving antenna on the unit. By measuring the time it takes for these signals to return and their strength, a computer can build a detailed, three-dimensional picture of the subsurface. The result is a slice-by-slice cross-section of the ground, revealing the depth, size, and shape of buried structures. For a suspected Roman villa, GPR can often map out individual rooms, corridors, and even the hypocaust pillars of a heating system, providing a blueprint for excavation long before the first trowel touches the soil. Working in perfect harmony with GPR is magnetometry, a method that reads the invisible magnetic memory of the soil. The Earth has a natural magnetic field, and magnetometers are incredibly sensitive instruments that can detect the tiniest local distortions to that field. These distortions are caused by human activity. For instance, when clay is fired in a kiln or a hearth burns intensely, the iron oxides within it become permanently magnetized, creating a strong local magnetic anomaly. Even the simple act of digging a ditch and then filling it back in with different soil creates a subtle magnetic signature, because the disturbed soil has different magnetic properties than the undisturbed ground around it. A stone wall, on the other hand, might show up as a faint, linear dip in the magnetic field. By walking in a careful grid pattern with the magnetometer, archaeologists can create a detailed map of these magnetic variations, which often reveals the floor plan of a building with stunning clarity, outlining walls, pinpointing kilns, and highlighting pits with an accuracy that is often breathtaking. The real power of this multi-layered approach emerges when we combine all these different datasets. Think of it as assembling a case with multiple, independent lines of evidence. The satellite imagery might first reveal a large, rectangular crop mark in a farmer's field. The LiDAR survey then confirms that there is a subtle, corresponding earthwork or series of mounds at that exact location. Finally, a team arrives with GPR and magnetometers for a detailed ground survey. The magnetometry data might paint a clear picture of the villa's foundation walls and locate a pottery kiln in an outbuilding, while the GPR confirms the depth of those walls and reveals a previously unknown cellar or a complex of deeper foundation. Each technology validates the others, building an irrefutable and richly detailed portrait of the site. This non-invasive trifecta allows archaeologists to understand a villa's entire layout, its industrial capacity, and even phases of construction and renovation, all while leaving the archaeological record completely intact for future generations with even more advanced technology. It's a conversation between the sky, the air, and the ground, all whispering the same story of a lost world waiting to be understood. Perhaps the most compelling way to understand this technological revolution is to see it in action at a single, remarkable location. The story of the Broughton Roman villa in Hampshire is a perfect example, a journey from a fleeting glimpse in a photograph to the full unveiling of a wealthy Romano-British estate. Its discovery began not with a satellite, but with the pioneering eye of an aerial archaeologist in the 1990s. Flying over the fields near the village of Broughton, he spotted something extraordinary, a series of faint but distinct crop marks etched into the landscape. From his vantage point, he could see the ghostly, geometric lines of walls and the dark, lush green arcs of ditches forming a complex, interconnected pattern. It was a tantalizing clue, a suggestion of something significant sleeping beneath the wheat and barley, but it was only a two-dimensional sketch. The true scale and splendor of what lay below remained a mystery for years, waiting for the next generation of tools to bring it into sharp focus. That next step came with a detailed geophysical survey, where magnetometry transformed those faint aerial hints into a stunningly clear architectural blueprint. As researchers walked the field with their sensitive instruments, the data painted a detailed picture on their screens. They could see the clear outline of a large, winged corridor villa, the main residential building arranged around a central space. But the survey revealed this was far more than just a large house. The magnetometry data showed a sprawling complex of additional structures, a separate, substantial bathhouse, multiple large barns or workshops, and a network of boundary ditches that defined the entire estate. This was no isolated farmstead. It was a major, organized agricultural and industrial center. The geophysics provided the roadmap, confirming that the crop marks were not just random soil variations, but the tangible remains of a high-status Roman life, giving archaeologists the confidence to plan a targeted excavation to uncover the story written in the soil. When excavations began, the findings surpassed all expectations, vividly bringing to life the world of the villa's inhabitants. The main house itself was a testament to comfort and Roman luxury. Archaeologists uncovered the remains of a hypocaust system, the Roman equivalent of central heating, where hot air from a furnace would circulate under raised floors to warm the rooms above. Several rooms contained stunning mosaic floors, their intricate geometric patterns and motifs crafted from thousands of tiny colored stone cubes, known as tesserae. These were not crude local imitations, but high-quality works, likely created by a traveling team of skilled artisans from a major urban center, demonstrating that the owner had both the wealth and the taste to import the very best in interior design. The walls, too, had been decorated, with fragments of painted plaster found in vibrant reds, yellows, and blues, showing that the interior was a riot of color and sophistication. The artifacts recovered from Broughton tell a parallel story of wealth, trade, and daily activity. Among the most telling finds were coins, which helped date the occupation of the villa from the 2nd to the 4th century AD. But it's the smaller, personal items that truly connect us to the people who lived there. Intricate pieces of jewelry were discovered, including brooches and hairpins, some made from jet and shiny black material that was highly prized. Fragments of fine Samian ware pottery, a distinctive glossy red tableware imported from Gaul, were found alongside amphora fragments that once held olive oil and wine from the Mediterranean. These objects are a physical record of a life of privilege and connectivity. They show that the owner of Broughton Villa was not living in isolation, but was plugged into a vast trade network, enjoying goods and fashions that linked them directly to the heart of the Roman Empire. Looking at the complete picture of Broughton the Grand House, the luxurious baths, the productive outbuildings, and the high-status goods, we can start to piece together the biography of its owner and the rhythm of life on the estate. This was almost certainly the seat of a local magnate, a man who may have had British ancestry, but who had fully embraced the Roman way of life to solidify his power and status. His day might have involved managing the vast agricultural output of his lands, meeting with tenants or stewards, and entertaining other local elites in his mosaic-lined dining room. The separate bathhouse was not just for hygiene, it was a social hub, a place for business and leisure where the rituals of Roman culture were performed and affirmed. The entire villa complex was a self-contained world, a statement of power and sophistication in the Hampshire countryside. It stands as a powerful testament to the success of Rome's project in Britain, proving that the empire's influence was not just imposed from above by soldiers and administrators, but was willingly adopted and lavishly expressed by a local elite who saw their future within the Roman world. Nestled in a secluded Cotswold Valley in Gloucestershire, Chedworth Roman Villa offers one of the most complete and evocative pictures of Roman Britain we have, a site where the luxury and sophistication of the era are preserved in stone and mosaic. For generations, visitors have marveled at its well-preserved walls and famous mosaic pavements, but it's the application of modern archaeological technology that has truly revolutionized our understanding of this place, revealing it to be not just a single luxurious residence, but the epicenter of a vast, bustling estate that evolved dramatically over 4 centuries. The story of Chedworth is a layered one, written not only in its beautiful floors, but in the very ground it sits upon, a narrative that geophysical surveys have only just begun to fully decipher. When you walk through the protective building that now shelters the villa's remains, the first things that capture your attention are the breathtaking mosaic floors. These are not mere decorations, they are complex statements of wealth, identity, and belief. In one of the most famous rooms, you can see a captivating scene depicting the 4 seasons as elegant human figures, each holding symbols of their time of year. This wasn't just a pretty picture, it was a powerful symbol of the owner's control over his agricultural world, a celebration of the yearly cycle that governed the estate's prosperity and wealth. The quality of these mosaics is exceptional, featuring intricate geometric patterns, mythological creatures, and sophisticated color palettes that speak to the work of highly skilled craftsmen, likely from a major urban center. These artisans would have traveled with their pattern books, laying down thousands of tiny, colored stone tesserae to create a permanent, lavish carpet that announced the owner's refined tastes and his deep connection to Roman cultural ideals to every guest who entered his home. Beyond the visual splendor, the villa was a marvel of Roman engineering, designed for comfort in the often chilly British climate. This is most evident in the remarkably preserved hypocaust system, the Roman equivalent of central heating. You can still see the stacks of short brick pillars that once supported the floor of the main living rooms, and most impressively, the bathhouse. Beneath these raised floors, a furnace, stoked by slaves or servants, would generate hot air and gases that would circulate through the space, warming the tiles above before escaping through specially designed box tiles embedded in the walls. Stepping into a room heated by a hypocaust in the depths of a British winter would have been a profound experience, a tangible demonstration of Roman technological superiority and a life of ease. The bathhouse itself was a complex social hub, featuring a sequence of rooms: the cold room, the warm room, and the hot room, each with its own hypocaust, allowing for the full Roman bathing ritual to be practiced in this remote corner of the empire. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Chedworth, and a discovery that highlights how our understanding continues to change, is the evidence suggesting the villa's inhabitants may have been among Britain's earliest Christians. Tucked away in a part of the complex, archaeologists found a curious feature: a small, shallow basin lined with lead, set just outside what is believed to be a dining room. While it could have been a simple fountain, its form and placement have led to a compelling theory that this might have been a baptistry. This interpretation is strengthened by the discovery of a Chi Rho symbol, one of the earliest Christian monograms, scratched onto a piece of plaster. If this theory is correct, it paints a fascinating picture of the villa's final century. In the 4th century AD, when Christianity was becoming the official religion of the Roman Empire, the wealthy owner of Chedworth may have converted, adapting part of his luxurious home into a private space for Christian worship, a quiet refuge for a new faith in a changing world. This rich story of mosaics, heating systems, and spiritual life was already known, but recent non-invasive surveys have dramatically expanded the stage upon which this drama played out. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry surveys conducted across the fields surrounding the known ruins have revealed that the visible stone walls are merely the heart of a much larger organism. The data uncovered the ghostly outlines of numerous other substantial buildings, including what appeared to be guest houses, worker accommodations, large barns, and specialized workshops for activities like metalworking. The surveys also traced the lines of boundary ditches and trackways, showing that the villa was part of a highly organized and densely populated landscape. This means Chedworth was not an isolated country house, but a vibrant, almost industrial-scale enterprise, a small township in its own right that would have been filled with the sounds and smells of daily labor, all supporting the luxurious lifestyle enjoyed within the main villa. This expanded view allows us to trace the villa's biography across the entire Roman period in Britain. It did not spring into existence fully formed. The earliest structures on the site, dating to the 2nd century AD, were relatively simple timber buildings. Over the next 200 years, the estate was continuously rebuilt and enlarged, reflecting the growing wealth and confidence of its owners. The grand stone walls, the sophisticated bathhouse, and the exquisite mosaics were all additions of the 3rd and 4th centuries, a period when Romano-British villas reached their peak of prosperity. The possible Christian phase at the very end of the 4th century shows an estate adapting to the empire's spiritual transformation. Chedworth's long life, now understood in its full geographical context, gives us a uniquely complete window into the entire Roman experience in Britain, from the initial adoption of Roman ways, through centuries of growing opulence, to its final years as the empire's influence waned, a story of rise, flourishing, and adaptation, all contained within one Cotswold Valley. The sheer volume of new sites being uncovered is nothing short of a historical earthquake, fundamentally redrawing the map of Roman Britain in real time. We are not merely adding a few more pins to the existing chart. We are watching an entirely new picture emerge, one that challenges long-held assumptions about the reach and density of Roman settlement. For generations, archaeological textbooks portrayed Roman Britain as a province concentrated in the south and east, with a thinning presence and fading influence the further west and north one traveled. Devon and Cornwall, in particular, were often depicted as remote, rugged backwaters, lightly touched by Roman civilization and largely inhabited by unconquered or only loosely controlled native tribes. The discoveries made through satellite and aerial survey are proving this traditional narrative to be not just incomplete, but fundamentally incorrect. A landmark initiative that has been at the forefront of this paradigm shift is the University of Exeter's Understanding Landscapes project. By systematically analyzing LiDAR data and aerial photographs across the southwest of England, researchers have made a series of staggering finds. They haven't just located one or two outliers. They have identified dozens of previously unknown, substantial farmsteads and villa sites scattered across Devon and Cornwall. These are not simple, native roundhouses, but complexes with clear Roman architectural influences, including rectangular buildings, corridor layouts, and evidence of organized agricultural production. Each new identification adds another data point to a pattern that is now undeniable. Roman-style settlement and economic activity in the Southwest was far more widespread, sophisticated, and integrated than anyone had previously dared to believe. This explosion of data completely transforms our perception of the Roman economic machine. Finding such a dense concentration of estates in what was considered a peripheral zone suggests a province humming with productivity from coast to coast. These villas were not isolated outposts. They were active nodes in a complex provincial economy. The fertile lands of Devon, for instance, were likely significant producers of grain to help supply the legions, while Cornwall's mineral wealth, particularly in tin, was being systematically exploited. The presence of these wealthy estates indicates a local elite with the means to invest in Roman amenities, which in turn implies a stable and profitable agricultural or industrial base capable of generating that surplus wealth. The map of Roman Britain is no longer one of a conquered territory, with a few bright spots of civilization. It is becoming a map of a fully occupied and economically vibrant province, with a landscape as meticulously organized and utilized as many closer to the heart of the empire. The implications of this newly discovered density are profound, forcing a complete rethink of the relationship between the Roman administration and the local population. The old model of a sharp divide between Romanized settlers in the lowlands and resistant native tribes in the highlands simply does not hold up. The evidence from the ground, or rather from the sky, suggests a much more complex and interesting story of adoption and adaptation. The individuals who owned and operated these villas in the far southwest were likely not retired legionaries from Italy, but rather the local elite, the chieftains and wealthy families of the Domnonii tribe. They saw the benefits of engaging with the Roman system, adopting the architectural styles, the agricultural methods, and the consumer goods that signaled status and success within the New World Order. Their villas were powerful statements of local identity within a Roman framework, proving that becoming Roman was often a conscious choice made by ambitious people to solidify their own power and prosperity within a changing world. This flood of new sites also presents a wonderful and very modern challenge for archaeologists: the problem of abundance. With limited time, funding, and resources, it is physically impossible to excavate every single one of these newly discovered locations. This has necessitated a shift in strategy. From reactive digging to proactive, intelligent preservation, the non-invasive data itself becomes a primary archive. Researchers now use the detailed geophysical and LiDAR maps to prioritize sites, asking which villas show unique layouts, which might have the highest potential for preserving organic remains, or which are under the most immediate threat from modern agriculture or development. In many cases, the decision is made to leave a site completely undisturbed, its secrets safe in the ground for future generations with even more advanced technologies to explore. The goal is no longer just to dig, it is to understand, to map, and to conserve an entire hidden landscape that we now know is there, preserving a priceless inheritance we barely knew we had. To truly grasp the economic powerhouse that was a Roman villa, we need to shift our perspective entirely. Forget the image of a quiet country retreat. Think instead of a bustling, multi-departmental corporation headquartered in the countryside. The main house, with its mosaics and baths, was merely the executive office. The real work, the wealth generation, happened all around it in a hive of specialized activity. These estates were fundamentally agro-industrial complexes, designed to extract maximum value from the land and its people. They produced raw materials, processed them into valuable goods, and fed those goods into the vast circulatory system of the Roman Empire. The discovery of on-site industries through geophysical surveys has been a revelation, showing us that a villa's economic portfolio was often surprisingly diverse. One of the most common and vital industries found within villa complexes was pottery production. The telltale signs of a kiln are unmistakable in magnetometry surveys, showing up as a powerful, concentrated magnetic anomaly caused by the intense, lasting heat that permanently altered the clay's properties. Finding a kiln on a villa estate tells us something crucial. This place was not just consuming goods from elsewhere, it was manufacturing its own. They would produce the vast quantities of everyday pottery needed on the estate storage jars for grain and oil, cooking pots, and courseware bowls. But often, they went further, creating finer wares for the table, or even producing a surplus for trade in local markets. This self-sufficiency in such a fundamental commodity was a key to economic stability, reducing reliance on expensive imports for basic needs and creating a potential revenue stream. Beyond pottery, evidence for metalworking is frequently uncovered. The needs of a large agricultural estate were constant. Horses needed shoes, plows needed tips, carts needed iron fittings, and workers needed tools. A smithy on site meant these essential items could be repaired and forged on demand, avoiding costly delays. But again, the scale often suggests more than just internal maintenance. Some villas show evidence of small-scale fabrication, perhaps producing hobnails for military boots or simple iron bars as a semi-finished product for trade. The presence of slag, the waste product from smelting, and the distinct magnetic signature of hearths and forges paint a picture of a place that was not only a consumer of metal goods, but an active participant in the local metal economy, turning raw ore into practical, valuable objects. Perhaps the most significant, though less visibly dramatic, industry was textile production. The Roman army, a massive and perpetually hungry institution, required a constant supply of clothing and blankets for its tens of thousands of soldiers. The British climate was perfect for raising sheep, and the wool from British flocks was highly regarded. A villa estate was perfectly positioned to capitalize on this. The entire process, from raw wool to finished cloth, could be managed on site. Sheep would be sheared, the wool would be cleaned and carded, and then spun into yarn using drop spindles, evidenced by the ubiquitous finding of ceramic spindle whorls. That yarn would then be woven into thick, warm cloth on large, upright looms. The discovery of loom weights, the heavy ceramic pieces that tension the warped threads on these looms, is one of the most common indicators of this industry. A villa with evidence of intensive weaving was essentially a clothing factory, quite likely fulfilling part of the state's massive procurement orders for the army stationed on Hadrian's Wall and elsewhere. This industrial and agricultural output did not just sustain the villa itself, it plugged the estate into a truly global trade network. Britain was renowned across the empire for specific exports, and the villas were the primary collection points. Historical sources and archaeological finds tell us that British wool was a premium product, likely exported as both raw fleece and finished cloth. Grain, particularly from the fertile soils of southern Britain, was another major export, essential for feeding the army and the urban populations of Gaul and the Rhineland. But one of the most fascinating and personal exports was the British hunting dog. These swift, strong animals were highly prized by the Roman elite for sport. We can imagine that a villa with extensive woodland on its estate might have specialized in breeding and training these dogs, which would then undertake a long, carefully managed journey across the empire, perhaps even ending up in the arenas of Rome itself. The mechanism of this trade reveals the sophisticated economic integration of the province. Goods would be transported from the villa along those straight, sturdy Roman roads to nearby small towns or ports. There, merchants would aggregate cargoes from multiple estates into shiploads destined for the continent. Amphory fragments found at villa sites, which once held Spanish olive oil or Gallic wine, are the physical proof of the return journey, the luxury goods the villa owner purchased with the profits from his wool, grain, and dog. This cycle of production and consumption turned the villas of Britain into engines of the provincial economy. They were not passive dwellings, but dynamic, profit-oriented enterprises that helped fuel the Roman machine, demonstrating a level of economic complexity and global connection that we are only now beginning to fully appreciate from the clues they left buried beneath our feet. Walking through the door of one of these grand country houses, you would have been immediately enveloped by an atmosphere of cultivated luxury, a world away from the damp and mud of the native British landscape. The architectural journey of the villa itself is a story of aspiration, often beginning as a simple, rectangular timber-framed structure, what archaeologists call a cottage villa. This was the starter home of the Romanized elite, functional, but with pretensions of grandeur. Over generations, as wealth and confidence grew, these humble beginnings were dramatically transformed. Wings were added, creating a distinctive corridor villa, and the most ambitious owners would eventually enclose a central garden or courtyard, creating a private, inward-focused world that was the ultimate symbol of status, the courtyard villa. This architectural evolution wasn't just about adding space. It was a physical manifestation of a family's rising place in the provincial hierarchy, a declaration that they had fully arrived within the Roman world. The visitor's experience was carefully choreographed to impress from the very first moment. You would typically approach the main house along a formal driveway, arriving at a colonnaded portico. This row of elegant columns supporting a covered walkway was more than just a fancy porch. It was a powerful architectural statement. It provided a shaded, dignified transition from the public outside world into the private realm of the owner, immediately setting the tone for what lay within. Stepping inside, you would often find yourself in a grand reception room, or an entrance hall designed to overwhelm the senses. The floors underfoot were not simple packed earth or timber, but intricate mosaics of complex pictures and geometric patterns crafted from thousands of tiny, colored stone and glass cubes known as tesserae. These were not just decorations, they were a permanent and expensive form of storytelling, announcing the owner's wealth, education, and cultural affiliations to everyone who entered. The subjects of these mosaic floors were deliberately chosen to convey specific messages. While some featured beautiful geometric patterns like guilloches and swastika meanders, the most impressive displayed vivid scenes from Roman mythology. Imagine a dining room floor depicting Bacchus, the god of wine, surrounded by reveling satyrs and maenads, a perfect, playful theme for a room dedicated to feasting and entertainment. Another might show Orpheus charming the animals with his lyre, a scene that symbolized the harmonious order the Romans believed their civilization brought to the world. In the 4th century, as Christianity grew, these pagan scenes might be replaced with more neutral geometric designs or even early Christian symbols. Each mosaic was a custom-made commission, laid by skilled craftsmen who traveled with pattern books, turning the ground beneath your feet into a canvas that spoke of epic tales, divine favor, and the owner's sophisticated taste. Rising from these spectacular floors, the walls offered another riot of color and imagery. They were covered in elaborate frescoes, a multi-stage process where layers of lime plaster were applied and then painted with mineral pigments while still damp, allowing the color to bind permanently with the wall. The result was a vibrant and durable surface that could transform any room. The lower sections might be painted to mimic richly colored marble panels, an expensive material that was impractical to import in large quantities. Above this, the main walls could feature entire scenes, perhaps a garden landscape, creating an illusion of expanded space, or figures from mythology seeming to interact with the room's inhabitant. The ceilings, too, were often decorated with delicate floral patterns or intricate geometric designs. Walking through these rooms, you were surrounded on all sides by art and color, an immersive environment that left no doubt about the owner's refined sensibilities and his commitment to living in the Roman manner. Nowhere was the Roman genius for engineering and the culture of leisure more perfectly combined than in the villa's bathhouse. This was not a mere functional space for getting clean, it was a vital social hub, a place for business, relaxation, and the performance of a cultural ritual. A typical villa bath complex was a sophisticated sequence of rooms, each with a specific purpose and temperature. You would begin in the frigidarium, the cold room with its plunge pool for an invigorating shock. From there, you move to the tepidarium, a warm room for gradual acclimatization, before finally entering the caldarium, the hot room, which was the heart of the entire system. The magic that heated these rooms was the hypocaust, a revolutionary system of central heating. The entire floor of the warm and hot rooms was raised on a grid of short brick pillars called pilli, creating a hollow space beneath. In an adjacent service room, a slave, known as a hypocaustarius, would constantly stoke a furnace, pushing hot air and gases through this underground cavity. The heat would then rise through special box tiles embedded in the walls, effectively turning the entire room into a giant radiator. The engineering extended to the water supply. Lead or ceramic pipes would channel water from a dedicated well or reservoir to a large heated tank above the furnace, ensuring a ready supply of hot water for the baths and plunge pools. The bathhouse, with its complex interplay of fire, water, and architecture, was the ultimate luxury, a place where the villa owner could literally sweat out the cares of the day while demonstrating his command of the most advanced technology of the age. It stood as the supreme symbol of Roman culture, a commitment to comfort, community, and civilized living, even on the very edge of their known world. At the very top of this social pyramid stood the villa owner himself, a figure who embodied the complex interplay of conquest and collaboration that defined Roman Britain. While it's tempting to picture a wealthy senator from Rome lounging in his British country estate, the reality was often more local and more intriguing. Many of these grand homes were likely owned by retired Roman military officers. After serving their 25 years in the legions, these veterans were often granted a generous discharge bonus and a plot of land. They were men already steeped in Roman culture, discipline, and engineering, and they possessed the capital and the know-how to establish a highly productive agricultural enterprise. They would have been formidable figures in their local communities, their authority rooted in a lifetime of military command and their connection to the power of the imperial machine. But an equally compelling, and perhaps more common, narrative is that of the native Briton who chose to become Roman. Imagine a local chieftain or a leader of a tribe like the Catavillani or the Atrebates. For generations, his ancestors had lived in timber roundhouses and followed traditional customs. Now, seeing the undeniable power and opportunity that came with aligning with Rome, he made a conscious decision to transform his identity. He would replace his family's traditional compound with a stone-built, rectangular villa. He would adopt Roman dress, learn Latin for official business, and import fine tableware for his meals. This was not necessarily a betrayal of his heritage, but a brilliant and pragmatic strategy for maintaining influence and wealth in a new world order. His villa was the ultimate proof of his successful transition, a physical declaration that he was now a Roman gentleman, a man of status and sophistication who could command respect throughout the Roman administration and the local population. The life of this owner, whether a retired legionary or an acculturated Briton, was one of managed leisure and responsibility. His day would have involved overseeing the vast operations of his estate, meeting with his farm manager to discuss the harvest, receiving reports on the herds of sheep or the output of the pottery kiln. He might host other local dignitaries for business or pleasure, impressing them in his mosaic-lined dining room during long, multi-course feasts. He was the patriarch, the judge, and the economic engine of his small world. Yet, his comfort and his entire way of life were made possible by a hidden army of labor, a diverse and stratified workforce that formed the vast base of the villa's social pyramid. Just beneath the owner, there was a crucial layer of managers and skilled artisans who kept the complex machine running smoothly. The most important of these was the villicus, or the estate manager. This was often a trusted slave or a freedman who acted as the owner's direct representative, possessing a deep understanding of agriculture, animal husbandry, and account keeping. He was the one who directed the daily work gangs, managed the stores of grain, and ensured that profits were maximized. Alongside him were skilled craftsmen, the blacksmith who shod the horses and repaired the plows, the potter who kept the kiln firing, and the carpenter who maintained the buildings and cart. These individuals, while not free in the modern sense, enjoyed a higher status than common laborers, often living in slightly better accommodation and possessing valuable skills that granted them a measure of respect and slightly better condition. The bulk of the workforce, however, was comprised of agricultural laborers, a group that included slaves, dependent tenants, and perhaps some seasonal hired workers. The slaves were human property bought and sold with no legal rights of their own. Their lives were defined by relentless toil plowing the fields, shearing the sheep, threshing the grain from dawn until dusk. They likely lived in cramped, basic barracks or in simple huts scattered across the estate, their existence a world away from the luxury of the main house. Yet, the picture is not one of simple binary opposition. A skilled slave, like the villicus, could wield significant authority over free tenants. And slavery in the Roman world was not always a permanent condition. It was possible for a hard-working or favored slave to be granted their freedom, becoming a freedman who might then continue to work on the estate in a managerial capacity or set up a small business in a nearby town. Alongside the slaves were the coloni, or tenant farmers. These were often landless local Britons who leased small plots of land from the villa owner. In return, they would pay a portion of their harvest as rent and were probably also required to provide a set number of labor days each year working the owner's personal fields. Their lives were precarious, tied to the success of the harvest and the whims of the landowner, but they possessed a degree of personal autonomy that a slave did not. They lived in their own simple, often traditional-style roundhouses on the fringes of the estate, potentially maintaining some of their native language and customs within their family units, creating a fascinating cultural blend at the very heart of the Roman economic system. This intricate social structure reveals the true nature of the villa. It was a microcosm of the Roman Empire itself, a hierarchical, economically driven society where a small elite lived in immense comfort supported by the labor of a vast majority. The success of the entire system relied on this division of roles. The owner provided the land, the capital, and the political connections. The managers provided the organizational expertise. And the laborers, both free and enslaved, provided the muscle that turned the soil into wealth. Uncovering the physical remains of their lives, the fine jewelry in the main house, the simple pottery in the worker huts, the tools in the smithy allows us to hear the faint echoes of this complex community, a society where status was everything, and the distance between the mosaic floor and the dirt floor was just a few steps, but a world apart in lived experience. This remarkable world of mosaic floors and heated bathhouses, of bustling industry and global trade, did not last forever. The grand story of Roman Britain, so vividly written in the stone of its villas, has a final, mysterious chapter, one that archaeologists are still piecing together today. So what happened to these sprawling estates after the Roman legions were withdrawn from Britain in the early 5th century? The evidence points not to a single, dramatic event, but to a complex and protracted process of transformation, decline, and in some cases, violent end. The fate of the villas is one of the great puzzles of British archaeology, a story told in collapsing roofs, silent kilns, and the gradual encroachment of the earth over once luxurious homes. One of the most compelling theories for the decline is that of a slow, economic unraveling. Remember, the villas were not self-sufficient castles. They were deeply integrated cogs in a vast imperial economic machine. Their wealth depended on long-distance trade, a stable currency, and a central administration that could enforce laws, collect taxes, and maintain the road. When the Roman Empire began to retract its power from Britain, that entire system began to fail. The legions, a massive market for British grain, wool, and leather, were gone. The sophisticated supply chains that brought Spanish olive oil and Gallic wine across the Channel were severed. Coinage, the lifeblood of a cash-based economy, stopped flowing in from the continent, making large-scale trade and the payment of wages incredibly difficult. For a villa owner, this meant his produce was now virtually worthless beyond his local area. There was no one to buy his surplus wool, and no way to import the fine wines and luxury goods that had defined his status. The economic rationale for maintaining a vast, complex, and expensive estate simply evaporated, leading to a gradual but inevitable decay. We can see this slow decline played out in the archaeological record at many sites. At Chedworth, for instance, there is evidence that in its final phase, the great bathhouse fell into disuse. The hypocaust system was no longer maintained, and the rooms were repurposed for more basic, perhaps industrial, uses. Mosaic floors in other villas show signs of being patched with simple flagstones or even packed earth, a clear indication that the wealth or the specialized skills needed for their repair were no longer available. It appears that life retreated into just a few rooms of the once sprawling complex. Grand dining rooms were subdivided, and the sophisticated infrastructure of Roman life slowly crumbled. This wasn't a sudden abandonment, but a long, drawn-out retreat from a Roman lifestyle, a process of simplification and adaptation to a new, more localized and impoverished reality. The culture of the villa was slowly being dismantled, not by invaders, but by economic irrelevance. However, not all villas met such a quiet end. The 5th and 6th centuries were a time of immense social upheaval and migration, with Angles, Saxons, and Jutes arriving from the continent. Some villa sites show stark evidence of a much more violent conclusion. At the Lullingstone Roman Villa in Kent, a site famous for its early Christian evidence, archaeologists uncovered a grim scene. In the final layers of occupation, they found human skeletons lying unburied on the floors of the main building. This is highly irregular in any Roman context where proper burial was a sacred duty. The most plausible explanation is that these individuals died during a sudden, catastrophic event, such as a raid, and were left where they fell as the site was abandoned. Other villas, particularly those in more exposed coastal regions, show layers of burning and destruction that coincide with this period. While it's unlikely there was a single, coordinated Saxon invasion that swept across the country, it is clear that in a world without the Roman army to keep the peace, some wealthy, undefended estates became tempting targets for raiders or were caught in the crossfire of local power struggles. Another fascinating clue comes from the buildings themselves, and it points not to destruction, but to systematic recycling. At numerous villa sites, archaeologists have found that the stone walls have been methodically robbed down their foundations. The large dressed stones that once formed elegant corners and door frames are gone, leaving only the rough rubble core. Where did these stones go? They were almost certainly quarried for new building projects. In a world where the knowledge and infrastructure for quarrying new stone had been lost, a Roman villa became a ready-made quarry. Its materials were repurposed to build early Saxon halls, or more commonly, the foundations for local churches and villages. The very stones that once symbolized Roman order and civilization were literally built into the fabric of the new, post-Roman world. This systematic dismantling speaks to a very practical response to a changed world. The villa was no longer a home, but a resource, its historical significance forgotten in the face of more immediate, practical need. This varied evidence forces us to abandon any simple, single story of what happened. The truth is that the fate of each villa was likely unique, shaped by its location, the decisions of its inhabitants, and the specific local conditions of the 5th and 6th centuries. Some, in more remote areas, may have been abandoned peacefully as families moved to be closer to new, emerging population centers. Others may have seen a continuity of occupation, but in a form that would be utterly unrecognizable to their original builders. A Romano-British family might have continued to live in a single wing of their ancestral villa for generations, but over time, they would have stopped speaking Latin, forgotten the myths depicted in their mosaics, and lost the knowledge of how to repair the hypocaust. Their material culture would have gradually become more similar to that of their Saxon neighbors. In this scenario, the villa didn't fall, it simply faded, its Roman identity slowly dissolving into the new cultural melting pot of early medieval Britain. Ultimately, the silent, overgrown ruins of these villas stand as powerful monuments to a profound historical transition. Their decline marks the end of a centralized, cash-based, globally connected economy and the beginning of a more localized, subsistence-based society. The disappearance of the villa lifestyle signifies the collapse of the very social class that had sustained it. The landed elite who displayed their wealth and Roman identity through mosaic floors and bathhouses. Whether they left gradually, were driven out by violence, or simply adapted until their Roman heritage was a distant memory, their departure changed the landscape of Britain forever. The great villas, once the engines of the province, were reclaimed by the land, their stories buried until, centuries later, a new technology would allow us to once again trace their outlines and ponder the mysterious and complex end of Roman Britain. There is a profound and bittersweet irony unfolding in our skies and fields, a synergy between a modern crisis and an ancient past that is reshaping our discovery of history. As our global climate changes, bringing hotter and drier summers to Britain and much of Europe, these challenging new weather patterns are creating an unexpected boon for satellite archaeology. The very droughts that threaten our ecosystems and agriculture are, in a strange twist, making the hidden landscape of Roman Britain more visible than it has been for 1,500 years. This happens because the principle behind crop marks is fundamentally tied to water stress. When a long, dry spell settles over the countryside, the differential growth of plants becomes starkly apparent. Crops growing over deep, moisture-retaining Roman ditches tap into their hidden reservoirs and stay a vibrant green, while those struggling over shallow soils atop stone foundations wilt and yellow rapidly. The more severe and prolonged the drought, the more dramatic this contrast becomes. What might have been a faint, barely perceptible outline in a normal summer can, after weeks of relentless sun, emerge as a dark, sharply defined geometric shape, a perfect architect's drawing rendered in living plants against a parched earth canvas. This phenomenon was spectacularly demonstrated during the record-breaking summer of 2018. For weeks, the British landscape baked under an unrelenting sun, with rainfall becoming a distant memory. From the ground, The effects were worrying for farmers and ecologists alike. But from space, something extraordinary was happening. Satellite and aerial surveyors began capturing images of the countryside that left archaeologists speechless. Across vast swaths of farmland, entire ancient landscapes materialized as if by magic. The outlines of not just single villas, but complete settlements, Iron Age farms, and even previously unknown Neolithic monuments appeared with a clarity rarely seen before. It was as if a giant, invisible hand had wiped away the dust of centuries, revealing a lost world written directly onto the land. These weren't just new pins on the map, they were entire chapters of British history, suddenly legible thanks to the extreme environmental conditions. The pace of discovery accelerated dramatically, with more new sites identified in that single summer than in the previous several years combined, all without a single excavation taking place. Yet, this acceleration of discovery exists in a tense partnership with a parallel threat. While the dry conditions are revealing sites from the air, they are simultaneously endangering the very archaeological remains they help us find. The preservation of organic materials, wood, leather, textiles, and even food within archaeological sites relies on a constant, waterlogged environment. When these waterlogged conditions, known as anoxic environments, are stable, they prevent oxygen from decaying delicate materials, allowing them to survive for millennia. A prolonged drought lowers the water table and dries out the soil, allowing oxygen to penetrate these previously sealed contexts. When this happens, timbers that have been perfectly preserved since the Roman period can begin to rot within a matter of years. Delicate leather shoes, intricate textiles, and even seeds and pollen that tell us about the ancient climate can simply turn to dust. We are in a race against time, using the visual gift of the drought to locate sites before the same climatic conditions destroy the fragile treasures they contain. This creates an urgent new mandate for 21st century archaeology. The approach can no longer be a leisurely one of survey, followed years later by excavation. The situation now demands a rapid response. When a drought reveals a spectacular new villa complex from the air, archaeologists know they have a narrow window to act. The priority shifts to immediate, non-invasive ground truthing using magnetometry and ground-penetrating radar to create a complete digital record of the site. In some critically threatened cases, this may even lead to rescue excavations to recover artifacts and environmental evidence before they are lost forever. The data gathered becomes more vital than ever, serving as a permanent digital archive of a site that may be deteriorating beneath our feet. In this way, the bittersweet synergy of climate change and technology is forcing a paradigm shift, moving archaeology from a discipline of slow, careful uncovering to one of agile, digital preservation, ensuring that these rediscovered stories are not lost a second time. And this incredible journey of discovery is no longer confined to the halls of academia or the exclusive domain of professional archaeologists. One of the most thrilling developments in recent years has been the opening up of this entire field to everyone, a global community of amateur sleuths and history enthusiasts playing a vital role in uncovering the past. This movement, often called citizen science, is transforming archaeology into a collaborative effort where anyone with curiosity and an internet connection can make a genuine contribution. The scale of newly available data from satellites and aerial surveys is simply too vast for any single team of researchers to analyze completely. By inviting the public to participate, we are effectively multiplying the number of eyes scanning the landscape, turning a specialized task into a massive, crowd-sourced treasure hunt that is yielding spectacular results. A powerful model for this kind of public engagement is found in projects like CITAN, which stands for the Coastal and Intertidal Zone Archaeological Network. This brilliant initiative focuses on a uniquely vulnerable part of our heritage, the archaeological sites that are being exposed and then rapidly destroyed by coastal erosion. As sea levels rise and storms intensify, the coastlines of Britain are constantly shifting, washing away the cliffs and soils that have protected ancient remains for centuries. CITAN trains and mobilizes a national network of volunteers to regularly monitor these endangered shores. These dedicated individuals walk the beaches at low tide, equipped with smartphones and GPS units, to photograph, map, and record the timbers of a Roman fish trap, the foundation of a medieval salt works, or the bones of a prehistoric forest that have been revealed by the retreating waves. Their work is a race against time, creating a permanent digital record of sites that may literally vanish with the next high tide. Each volunteer becomes a guardian of a fragile piece of history, proving that you don't need a doctorate to help save our collective past from the forces of nature. For those whose adventures are more digital than muddy, the entire planet has become a searchable archaeological database. Online platforms like Google Earth have democratized discovery in an unprecedented way. With just a few clicks, anyone can now access high-resolution satellite imagery of virtually any corner of the globe and begin their own investigation. This has led to a phenomenon some call armchair archaeology, where thousands of people meticulously scan fields, deserts, and coastlines for the telltale signs of ancient structures. The process is surprisingly intuitive. You learn to look for those distinctive crop marks, the sharp, geometric lines of a building foundation, or the perfect circle of a buried ditch that stand out from the natural features of the landscape. Incredible discoveries have already been made this way, from potential Roman villas in Britain to ancient geoglyphs in the Middle East, all identified by sharp-eyed individuals sitting at their home computers. This global network of amateur observers means that a farmer in Nebraska or a student in Tokyo can stumble upon a significant archaeological site in rural England, permanently blurring the lines between who gets to be a discoverer and where scientific exploration can happen. The impact of this public participation is far more than just symbolic. It is producing a tangible and accelerating wave of new knowledge. When a volunteer reports a potential site through an official portal, that location is added to a database for professional archaeologists to investigate further, often with targeted ground surveys or more detailed aerial scan. This filtering process is incredibly efficient. It allows the experts to focus their limited resources on the most promising leads, knowing that they have been pre-screened by a distributed network of passionate and increasingly skilled observers. This collaborative model accelerates the entire research cycle, turning what was once a slow, methodical process into a dynamic, crowd-accelerated science. Every new set of eyes looking at a satellite image increases the probability that a faint, ghostly outline will be noticed, documented, and saved from oblivion. In this new era, the map of our past is not being drawn by a single cartographer, but is being collaboratively colored in by a global community of curious minds, each adding their own small piece to a picture that is growing richer and more detailed by the day. Of course, this technology is nothing short of revolutionary, but it's also crucial to understand that the view from space doesn't come with an instruction manual. The ghostly lines and geometric shapes we see etched into the fields are powerful clues, but they are rarely straightforward answers. One of the most significant challenges is the inherent ambiguity of the data. That perfect rectangle picked up by a satellite could indeed be the foundation of a Roman villa, but it could also be the remains of a medieval barn, the outline of a more recent farm building that was demolished generations ago, or even a geological feature that just happens to look man-made. The technology is brilliant at showing us that something is there, but it often falls to more traditional methods to definitively answer the question of what that something actually is. This is where the indispensable process of ground truthing comes in. Ground truthing is the essential act of verifying what the remote sensors have detected, and it most often means physical excavation. Think of it as the difference between a doctor seeing a shadow on an X-ray and then performing a biopsy to get a definitive diagnosis. The satellite gives us the big picture, the potential, but the trowel and the sieve provide the proof. For example, a magnetic anomaly that suggests a pottery kiln can only be confirmed by excavating that precise spot and finding the fired clay floor, the shattered wasters pottery that was ruined during firing, and the charcoal residue that pinpoints its function. A crop mark showing a series of rooms might be confirmed as a Roman villa only when archaeologists uncover fragments of distinctive Roman roof tile, painted plaster, or a piece of mosaic. Excavation provides the context, and the artifacts that breathe life into the pixelated images, turning intriguing patterns into concrete historical fact. Without this critical step, we would be left with a map of beautiful mysteries, full of potential but lacking the definitive stories that make the past come alive. Beyond the challenge of interpretation, these fragile archaeological sites face relentless threats from the modern world. The very landscapes that preserve these ancient blueprints are often the same ones being actively used for agriculture, construction, and development. Deep plowing, a common farming practice, can be devastating. A plowshare slicing through the soil can shatter delicate artifacts, scatter layers of occupation, and tear apart the very foundations of a building that has survived for nearly 2 millennia. Each pass of the tractor brings a risk of irreversible damage, churning up history and mixing it beyond recognition. Similarly, urban expansion and large-scale infrastructure projects can completely obliterate a site before anyone even knows it's there. A housing estate or a new road built over a previously unknown villa complex effectively seals its fate, destroying the archaeological record forever. This creates a constant race against time, where the technology to discover these sites must outpace the modern activities that threaten to erase them. Furthermore, the ability to accurately read and interpret this data is a skill that requires a deep and trained archaeological eye. It's not as simple as looking for straight lines in a field. An expert must draw upon a vast reservoir of knowledge about soil science, geology, and the specific construction techniques of different historical periods. They need to understand how different types of vegetation respond to various buried features, and be able to distinguish between a natural soil mark and a man-made ditch. For instance, a faint, curved mark could be an Iron Age storage pit, or it could be a badger set. A linear depression could be a Roman road, or it could be an old field drain from the 18th century. The raw data from a magnetometry survey looks like a chaotic splash of blacks, whites, and grays to an untrained observer. It takes years of experience to recognize the specific signature of a wall, a kiln, or a rubbish pit within an abstract image. This human element is irreplaceable. The technology provides the tool, but the archaeologist provides the intellect and intuition to wield it correctly and separate the historical signal from the natural noise. This incredible power to see the invisible, however, comes with a profound and immediate responsibility. For every new site revealed by a satellite image or a drought-induced crop mark, a clock starts ticking, not just the natural clock of decay, but a human one driven by greed. The moment the location of a previously unknown villa becomes known, even within confidential archaeological databases, it becomes a target. The threat comes from looters, often called nighthawks, who descend under the cover of darkness with metal detectors, trespassing on protected land to plunder the past for personal profit. These individuals are not treasure hunters, they are cultural vandals. Their goal is to find valuable objects, coins, jewelry, intricate pieces of metalwork, and rip them from the ground, destroying the very context of the meaning. A coin found by an archaeologist in a stratified layer can tell us about trade routes and the date of a building's occupation. That same coin, sold anonymously on the internet, becomes just another commodity, its historical story erased forever. The holes these nighthawks leave behind are more than just scars on the landscape. They are voids in our collective understanding, ripping pages from a history book we have only just begun to read. The ethical dilemma extends far beyond just protecting a site from immediate theft. Once a location is secure, archaeologists face a much deeper, more philosophical question: to dig or not to dig. Excavation is, by its very nature, a destructive process. The meticulous recording of a site is our best effort to capture a moment in time, but once a layer of soil is removed, it can never be put back exactly as it was. This reality forces a difficult choice. Do we excavate now, using our current methods to learn what we can, knowing that we are inevitably losing some information that future technologies might have been able to retrieve? Or do we make the conscious decision to leave the site entirely undisturbed, a time capsule preserved in the earth for the archaeologists of the next century, who will undoubtedly have tools and techniques we can scarcely imagine today? This is not an abstract debate. It's a constant calculation made on a site-by-site basis, weighing the potential for imminent destruction from farming or erosion against the promise of future knowledge. This preservation ethic, often called in situ preservation, is increasingly becoming a guiding principle in modern archaeology. The idea is that the ground itself is the ultimate museum, providing a stable, protective environment for fragile organic materials that would decay rapidly if exposed to the air. We have learned this lesson from spectacular finds like the Mary Rose or the Viking ships of Roskilde, where waterlogged conditions preserved wood, leather, and textiles for centuries. By leaving a Roman well or a timber building foundation safely buried and waterlogged, we are consciously choosing to bank that knowledge for the future. We are admitting the limits of our own technology, trusting that our successors will be able to perform analyses we cannot yet conceive of, perhaps extracting genetic information from soil samples or creating three-dimensional molecular maps of a decomposed object. It is an act of humility and long-term thinking, a gift sent forward through time, but this passive approach must be balanced with the needs of the present. And this is where the third, and perhaps most crucial, ethical pillar comes into play, the imperative to work collaboratively with local communities. For too long, archaeology was something done to a place, not with it. A team of experts would arrive, excavate a site, take the most exciting finds back to a distant museum, and publish a report read only by other specialists. The people who lived in the landscape, whose own history and identity were intertwined with these ruins, were often mere spectators. Today, that model is rightly seen as not only outdated but unethical. Modern archaeology recognizes that local communities are the permanent stewards of this heritage. Their knowledge of the land, old local names, stories passed down through generations, observations of oddities in the soil can be invaluable. More importantly, they have a fundamental right to be involved in the discovery and interpretation of their own past. Successful projects now build community engagement into their core from the very beginning. This means holding open days where people can see the work in progress, giving talks in village halls, and creating educational programs for local schools. It means training volunteers in archaeological techniques, turning residents into active participants in the uncovering of their history. When a decision is made about a significant find, whether it should be displayed in a local museum or reburied for its own protection, that conversation now includes the voices of the community. This collaborative approach transforms archaeology from an external extraction into a shared enterprise. It fosters a sense of ownership and pride, ensuring that the legacy of a discovery isn't just a line in an academic paper, but a living part of the local cultural fabric. It is through this partnership that we build the most effective and enduring form of protection for these fragile sites. A community that feels connected to them, values them, and is invested in watching over them long after the archaeologists have packed up their tools and moved on. Looking ahead, the trajectory of satellite archaeology points toward a future of even sharper vision and faster, more intelligent discovery. While current methods like LiDAR and multispectral imaging have already revolutionized our view of the past, the next wave of technologies promises to move from revealing shapes to identifying substances, and from relying on human observation to leveraging artificial intelligence for planetary scale analysis. One of the most promising frontiers is hyperspectral imaging. Unlike our eyes or standard cameras that see only in broad bands of red, green, and blue, or even multispectral sensors that capture a handful of specific wavelengths, hyperspectral sensors are like superpowered spectrometers. They capture hundreds of very narrow, contiguous bands of light across the electromagnetic spectrum, from visible to infrared and beyond. This creates an incredibly detailed chemical fingerprint for every single pixel in an image. The power of this lies in its specificity. While a standard satellite might see a crop mark indicating a buried feature, a hyperspectral sensor could theoretically identify the exact mineral composition of the soil in that mark. It could detect the unique spectral signature of crushed Roman mortar, distinguish it from the calcium carbonate residue of degraded limestone foundations, or even identify the phosphates and other chemical traces left by ancient habitation and waste. This moves us from simply seeing the ghostly outline of a villa to potentially understanding its construction materials and the daily activities that took place within its walls, all from orbit. Imagine being able to not only map a buried settlement, but also pinpoint the location of its metalworking area based on soil chemistry, or identify the specific workshop that produced a type of pottery based on the clay signatures in the ground. This transforms the landscape from a monochrome blueprint into a richly colored chemical map of past human life. Accompanying this leap in sensing capability is an equally transformative development in data processing, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. The sheer volume of data generated by modern satellite constellations and aerial surveys is simply too immense for any team of human analysts to process in a lifetime. A single satellite can image vast swaths of the planet daily, and projects like the European Space Agency's Copernicus program generate petabytes of open data. This is where AI steps in as the indispensable assistant. Researchers are now training sophisticated algorithms to recognize the visual and spectral patterns associated with archaeological features. They feed these AI models thousands of known examples, confirmed crop marks of Roman villas, LiDAR signatures of Iron Age hill forts, magnetic anomalies of burial mounds. The algorithm learns the subtle visual language of the past. Once trained, this AI can then be set loose on thousands of square miles of previously unexamined satellite imagery. It scans the data at a speed and scale that is humanly impossible, systematically flagging areas of high probability for containing archaeological sites. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't suffer from eye strain, and it can consistently apply its learned criteria across an entire country's landscape. This doesn't replace the archaeologist, it supercharges them. Instead of spending months manually scanning images, the expert can focus their intellect on the most promising targets flagged by the AI, prioritizing field verification and in-depth interpretation. This human-machine partnership is set to accelerate the pace of discovery exponentially, turning a slow, methodical search into a rapid, targeted identification process. We are on the cusp of a future where an AI could analyze the entire land surface of a region like Devon or Wales in a matter of days, presenting archaeologists with a list of tens of thousands of potential new sites to investigate. The ultimate potential is unlocked when these two technologies, hyperspectral sensing and AI analysis, are fused together. An AI could be trained not just on visual shapes, but on complex chemical signatures. It could be instructed to scan hyperspectral data for the unique combination of minerals associated with the Roman bathhouses' waterproof cement, or the specific soil nutrients that accumulated in ancient animal pens. This would allow for a form of archaeological remote sensing that is both predictive and classificatory. The system wouldn't just say, "There is an anomaly here." It could say, "There is a high probability of a Roman villa at this location," with a 90% confidence level, and the spectral data suggests the presence of a hypocaust system in the northern wing. This moves the discipline from discovery to detailed, non-invasive interpretation before a single researcher ever sets foot in the field. This impending flood of data will also fundamentally change the nature of archaeological questions. We will shift from asking, "Where is the next villa?" to asking, "What was the complete settlement pattern of this river valley?" Or how did the density of rural farmsteads change in response to the political crises of the 3rd century? With a near-complete map of a region's archaeological landscape, we can study entire systems rather than individual sites. We can model ancient economies, track the growth and decline of populations over centuries, and understand the environmental impact of Roman agriculture on a massive scale. The future of satellite archaeology is not just about finding more things. It is about using this comprehensive, data-rich view of the past to answer the big, complex questions about how human societies truly functioned, adapted, and transformed the world around them, offering lessons that resonate profoundly with our own relationship with the planet today. We become accustomed to seeing these villas as grand, isolated country houses, but that perspective is precisely what satellite archaeology is shattering. These complexes were never meant to be solitary islands of luxury. They were vital, interconnected nodes in a sprawling provincial network designed for one primary purpose: to feed, clothe, and fund the Roman machine. Now, by zooming out with our satellite view, we can finally see the full tapestry of the Roman countryside, a meticulously organized landscape where every road, field boundary, and trackway served the overarching goal of economic efficiency. The villa was the beating heart, but the roads were the arteries, and the surrounding fields were the lifeblood that sustained the entire system. What the technology reveals is a level of territorial planning and management so comprehensive it transforms our image of Britannia from a conquered territory into a corporate farm on an imperial scale. The most striking feature of this organized landscape is the road network, and from space, its relentless logic becomes breathtakingly clear. Roman roads are famous for their dead straight alignments, engineered to move troops and officials as swiftly as possible. But their economic function was just as critical. When we overlay the locations of newly discovered villas onto maps of known Roman roads, a compelling pattern emerges. The vast majority of these estates are situated within a very short distance, often just a mile or two, from a major Roman thoroughfare. This was no accident. A villa's economic survival depended on this connectivity. A road allowed the estate's surplus grain, wool, and pottery to be transported efficiently to nearby market towns or ports for shipment across the empire. In return, it brought the essential imports that defined the owner's Roman lifestyle: amphorae of wine and olive oil, fine Samian ware tableware, and even the exotic spices that seasoned their meals. The road was their link to the globalized Roman economy, and the satellite view shows us just how deliberately these villas were positioned to capitalize on that access, clustering along transportation corridors like businesses along a modern highway. Beyond the roads, satellites are unveiling the very skeleton of agricultural production, the Roman field system, across large swaths of lowland Britain, particularly in regions like the Thames Valley or the Cotswolds. LiDAR and crop marks are revealing extensive rectilinear patterns etched into the landscape. These are the remains of Roman field boundaries, a system of ditches and banks that divided the land into neat, often very long, rectangular plots. This type of land division, known as accentuation in its most formal expression, was a hallmark of Roman colonial planning. It represented a fundamental reorganization of the land, replacing the more irregular, often communal fields of the pre-Roman Iron Age with a rational, measurable, and taxable system of private property. The discovery of these vast, coordinated field systems tells us that the countryside was not just farmed, but systematically engineered for maximum output. It allowed for the clear definition of land ownership, which was essential for the collection of taxes, and it facilitated the efficient use of the heavy wheeled plows the Romans introduced, which could turn the soil more deeply and increase crop yields dramatically. Woven into this managed landscape were countless smaller settlements that supported the villa-based economy. The satellite view rarely shows a villa existing in a vacuum. Instead, we see them as the central, most substantial node in a hierarchy of habitation. Scattered around a major villa like Broughton or Chedworth, the geophysical surveys reveal the footprints of numerous smaller, simpler farmsteads. These were likely the homes of the coloni, the tenant farmers who worked parcels of the villa's land, or perhaps less wealthy freeholders. Their existence reveals a layered social and economic structure. The villa owner controlled the central production and processing, but the actual cultivation of the land was devolved to this network of smaller units. Furthermore, the surveys often detect the presence of specialized way stations or small roadside settlements known as vici. These clusters of buildings, located at crossroads or near bridges, would have provided services to the traffic moving along the roads: a blacksmith to shoe a horse, a tavern for a night's rest, a small shrine for a traveler's offering. This intricate web of major villas, smaller farmsteads, and service settlements paints a picture of a bustling, populated, and highly differentiated countryside, all functioning in a symbiotic relationship. Adding a spiritual and communal dimension to this economic landscape were the rural temples and shrines that satellites are also bringing to light. These were not the massive temples of urban centers, but smaller, often circular or square structures known as phantom, frequently located in picturesque, elevated spots near springs or grove. Their distinctive shapes are now regularly picked up by aerial survey. The placement of these temples is highly significant. They are often found at the boundaries of territories or at the intersection of routeways, serving as neutral ground where people from different estates and communities could gather for festivals and ritual. The discovery of a temple near a cluster of villas tells us that the Roman countryside had a rich spiritual life that bound the community together. It also highlights a fascinating blend of cultures. Many of these temples were dedicated not just to Roman gods like Mars or Mercury, but to local Celtic deities, sometimes merged with Roman ones in a process known as Interpretatio Romana. This fusion of spiritual beliefs in the landscape mirrors the social and economic fusion happening in the villas themselves, showing a province that was creating its own unique Romano-British identity. When we combine all this evidence, the villas, the roads, the field systems, the smaller settlements, and the temples, a truly comprehensive picture of the Roman imperial project comes into focus. This was not a haphazard collection of farms. It was a consciously managed, multi-layered system designed for optimal resource extraction. The entire landscape was treated as a productive asset. The Roman administration, in partnership with the local villa-owning elite, had reshaped the very earth of Britain to service the needs of the empire. The straight roads moved goods and soldiers. The rectangular fields maximized agricultural surplus. The villas acted as centralized collection and processing points. And the entire network was stabilized by a shared spiritual and administrative framework. This satellite eye view reveals a sophistication in rural organization that was unparalleled in Britain until the modern era. It shows us that the success of Roman Britain was not just built in its cities and forts, but was cultivated, acre by carefully measured acre, in its deeply organized and astonishingly productive countryside. And yet, for every villa like Chedworth that has been brought back into the light, there are dozens, perhaps even hundreds, whose stories remain trapped beneath the soil. These are the ghost sites, the phantoms glimpsed only from the air, their full splendor and secrets preserved in an archaeological deep freeze, waiting for the moment a trowel might finally grant them a voice. One such tantalizing enigma lies hidden beneath the rolling fields of a place known as Berry Hill in Hampshire. From the ground, it's an unremarkable stretch of farmland. But from the sky, during a particularly dry summer, the land revealed a secret it had kept for 16 centuries. The unmistakable, sprawling outline of what experts believe is one of the largest Roman villa complexes ever discovered in Britain. The crop marks show not just a single large building, but a veritable village surrounding it, a maze of boundary ditches, trackways, and subsidiary structures sprawling across acres. The sheer scale is what takes the breath away. This wasn't just a wealthy estate, this was a regional capital in its own right, a hub of economic activity that would have dwarfed many of its known neighbors. What level of luxury might its main house have contained? Could its floors hold mosaics rivaling those found anywhere in the province? The magnetometry data hints at a massive, apse-ended structure, possibly a grand reception hall or even a private temple, suggesting an occupant of immense wealth and status whose name and story are a complete mystery to us. Then, there is the haunting case of the villa at Dinnington in Somerset. Here, the aerial photographs revealed a beautifully preserved blueprint of a classic winged corridor villa, but with a bizarre and captivating twist. Right through the very center of the Roman foundations, the crop marks also show the outline of a much earlier, prehistoric settlement, an Iron Age roundhouse, its circular footprint perfectly preserved beneath the later Roman walls. This palimpsest of history, one civilization literally built atop the ghost of another, poses a series of captivating questions. Did a native British family live on this spot for generations, first in their traditional roundhouse, and then, as fortunes changed, build a Roman-style villa directly over their ancestral home? Or does this site tell a story of displacement, where a Roman landowner cleared away the old to make a statement with the new? An excavation here wouldn't just uncover a villa, it would dissect a moment of profound cultural transition, potentially allowing us to trace a single family's journey from the Iron Age into the Roman world, a story of transformation written in layers of soil and stone. The potential treasures locked within these unexcavated sites go far beyond gold coins or jewelry. The true treasure is information. Consider the possibility of encountering another Water-Newton treasure. In 1975, a farmer plowing near Cambridgeshire accidentally uncovered a hoard of exquisite silver vessels, but these weren't just any silver pieces. They were the earliest Christian liturgical silver ever found in the entire Roman Empire, proving a thriving Christian community existed in Britain far earlier than anyone had believed. A similar cache could be waiting in any one of these unknown villas. Perhaps one contains a hidden hoard of writing tablets, the thin wooden leaves coated with wax, which, if found in waterlogged conditions, might still bear the scratch marks of styluses. These could be business accounts, personal letters, or legal documents, the actual voices of the people who lived there, speaking to us directly across the centuries. The discovery of such organic materials, preserved in the oxygen-free environment of a well or a deep ditch, would be an archaeological lottery win, offering a clarity of understanding that stones and pottery fragments alone can never provide. The stories these sites could tell are equally compelling. Imagine an excavation revealing a villa that specialized in an unexpected industry. The geophysical survey of one unexcavated site in the Cotswolds shows a startlingly powerful magnetic anomaly in an outbuilding, far stronger than a typical pottery kiln. This has led to speculation that it might have been a statio, an official state-run factory. Perhaps it was a gynoecium, a weaving factory dedicated to producing the heavy wool cloaks, the Burrus Britannicus, for which Britain was famous and which was supplied directly to the Roman army. Uncovering such a site would allow us to move from abstract economic models to a tangible understanding of how the imperial procurement machine actually worked on the ground. We could learn about the workers, their conditions, and the sheer industrial scale of supplying a frontier army numbering in the tens of thousands. The decision to leave these sites undisturbed is a deliberate and deeply thoughtful one, a pact made with the future. Every time we excavate, we destroy the very thing we study. The context of an artifact, its precise location in the soil, what it was found next to, the layer it came from, is its meaning. Once that context is removed, it can never be fully recreated. By preserving these villas in their pristine, buried state, we are creating a protected archive. We are banking this knowledge for the archaeologists of the next generation, and the one after that, who will have technologies we cannot yet dream of. Imagine a future where ground-penetrating radar can not only map walls, but create a three-dimensional molecular image of the soil, revealing the exact spot where a wooden basket decayed, or detecting the residual chemical signature of a meal that was spilled on a floor. The untouched villa is a time capsule, and our generation is choosing to be its guardians rather than its consumers, trusting that future tools will unlock its stories with a precision and a nuance that we can only imagine today. So the next time you see a seemingly ordinary field in the British countryside, remember the hidden world that likely lies beneath your feet. Those quiet, green expanses are Britain's largest and most precious museum, housing countless unsolved mysteries and untold stories. Each unexcavated villa is a sealed book in a vast, underground library, a promise of future discovery that ensures the history of Roman Britain will never be a finished story, but a living, breathing narrative that is constantly being rewritten, one pixel, one scan, and one day, one careful excavation at a time. The journey of a single Roman villa from a buried secret to a confirmed piece of history is a meticulously choreographed dance between technology and traditional skill, a multi-stage process that transforms a cluster of digital pixels into a tangible story. It all begins not in a muddy trench, but in a quiet office where an analyst stares at a computer screen, scanning terabytes of satellite imagery for the faintest ghost of a pattern. Their trained eye is drawn to a subtle anomaly in a farmer's field, a series of straight, parallel lines etched in a slightly different shade of green, or a perfect rectangle visible only in the near-infrared spectrum. This is the first whisper from the past, a potential blueprint hidden in the living canvas of a wheat crop. At this stage, it's just a hypothesis, a compelling digital clue that something man-made and geometric lies beneath the surface. The analyst marks the coordinates, but the work has only just begun. This pixelated hint is the starting pistol for a rigorous investigation designed to separate archaeological fact from natural fiction. To move from a satellite's broad view to a more detailed perspective, the next step often involves a targeted aerial reconnaissance flight. Armed with the precise coordinates, a pilot and an aerial archaeologist take the skies, typically during the golden hours of a dry summer when crop marks are at their most pronounced. Flying over the target field, they use high-resolution cameras equipped with specialized filters to capture the anomaly in stunning detail. From a few hundred feet up, what was a faint suggestion on a satellite image can blossom into a clear, coherent shape. They might see the dark, lush lines of filled-in ditches forming the outline of a wall, or the pale, stunted growth over foundations sketching the rooms of a building. The aerial photograph provides the first truly legible map of the site, confirming that the satellite data has revealed a genuine, structured feature and not a geological fluke. This visual confirmation is the green light that justifies bringing in more sensitive, ground-based technology to peer directly into the Earth. With a clear aerial photograph in hand, the investigation moves to the ground for the crucial phase of geophysical survey. This is where the site is given a non-invasive medical scan, using tools that can see through the soil without disturbing a single blade of grass. A team arrives at the field, often with the landowner's permission, and begins the methodical work of magnetometry. Walking in straight lines, like human lawnmowers, they push a cart equipped with a highly sensitive magnetometer that measures tiny variations in the Earth's magnetic field. As they traverse the site, the instrument builds a detailed grayscale map on their laptop. On this map, the buried past begins to scream in silence. The disturbed soil of an ancient ditch appears as a dark, linear streak. The fired clay of a Roman pottery kiln or a hearth shows up as a brilliant white splodge, a powerful magnetic hotspot. The stone foundations of walls, which are less magnetic than the surrounding soil, appear as faint geometric lines of gray. This process can take days, but by the end, the team possesses a near-photographic plan of the entire buried complex, revealing not just the main villa building, but also its outhouses, wells, and boundary ditches. Often working in tandem with the magnetometer is the ground-penetrating radar, or GPR unit. This device, pushed along the ground, sends pulses of radio energy into the Earth and listens for the echoes. When these pulses hit a change in density, a solid wall versus soft soil, or a void like a buried pit is some of the energy bounces back to the sensor. By measuring the time it takes for these echoes to return, the GPR constructs a three-dimensional, slice-by-slice picture of the subsurface. This is the technological equivalent of slicing a cake to see all its layers. While magnetometry gives a superb plan view, GPR provides the depth and the vertical profile. It can show an archaeologist that a wall foundation is 3 courses of stone deep, or reveal the presence of a completely unexpected cellar or a hypocaust system hidden beneath the main building. Together, magnetometry and GPR provide a comprehensive and startlingly accurate digital model of the entire site, a virtual excavation that minimizes guesswork and maximizes the potential for a successful physical dig. Only after this full suite of remote sensing is complete and a detailed digital twin of the site exists, does the team even consider breaking ground. The planning of the test excavation is a strategic exercise, using all the gathered data to answer very specific questions. The geophysical maps act as the blueprint, and the archaeologists use them to place their trial trenches with surgical precision. Instead of digging randomly, they can place a trench directly over a magnetic anomaly suspected to be a kiln, or slice across a linear feature to confirm it is indeed a wall and determine its construction method. The goal of this initial excavation is not to uncover the entire villa, but to ground truth the remote sensing data to confirm that the shapes on the screen correspond to real archaeological features, and to retrieve the datable artifacts that will anchor the site in a specific historical period. The moment of truth arrives as the excavator's trowel carefully scrapes away the modern plow soil, Then, the team begins the slow, meticulous work by hand. Following the precise locations indicated by the surveys, they peel back the layers of history. The excitement is palpable when the first course of a mortared stone wall appears exactly where the magnetometry map said it would be, or when the dark, organic fill of a ditch emerges right on cue. But the true rewards are the small finds, the shattered pieces of Samian ware pottery that pin the occupation to the 2nd century, the bronze coin of Emperor Hadrian that provides a firm date, or the discarded animal bones that reveal the diet of the inhabitant. Each of these artifacts is a piece of the puzzle, but it is the context provided by the geophysical surveys that gives them their full meaning. Finding a coin in a ditch is one thing. Understanding that the ditch is part of a larger boundary system for a wealthy villa estate, as revealed from space, is what transforms that single coin into a chapter of a much larger story. This careful, evidence-led process, from pixel to trowel, ensures that every discovery is not just a lucky find, but a verified and deeply understood window into the lost world of Roman Britain. While the story unfolding beneath the fields of Britain is a compelling one, it's crucial to recognize that this is not an isolated phenomenon. The technological revolution of satellite archaeology is a global one, peeling back the layers of history on every continent and rewriting the narrative of human civilization. The same principles that reveal a Roman villa's floor plan in Hampshire are, at this very moment, uncovering lost empires in dense jungles, tracing the footsteps of ancient traders across vast deserts, and mapping the outlines of civilizations we never knew existed. Britain's hidden Roman landscape is just one chapter in a worldwide story of rediscovery, proving that our planet is a single, vast archaeological site waiting for the right tools to give it a voice. One of the most spectacular demonstrations of this global power is the work being done in the jungles of Cambodia. For centuries, the magnificent temple of Angkor Wat stood as a solitary, awe-inspiring monument, seemingly abandoned in the wilderness. Historians long believed it was a ceremonial center surrounded by a sparsely populated hinterland. That entire perception was shattered when archaeologists employed airborne LiDAR to digitally strip away the dense, towering canopy of the rainforest. What emerged from the data was nothing short of a metropolitan miracle. The lasers revealed a sprawling, low-density urban complex stretching for over 1,000 square miles, intricately engineered with canals, reservoirs, roads, and the foundations of thousands of ordinary houses. This was not just a temple complex, it was the bustling heart of the Khmer Empire, one of the most extensive pre-industrial cities on Earth, supporting a population of perhaps 750,000 people. The LiDAR map showed a sophisticated hydrological system capable of managing the region's violent monsoon cycles, explaining how such a massive population could be sustained. This single technological survey transformed Angkor from a mysterious, isolated ruin into an understood, sprawling metropolis, completely altering our appreciation for the scale and sophistication of Southeast Asian civilization. On the other side of the world, in the searing heat of the Sahara Desert, a different kind of discovery is taking place. Here, the challenge isn't piercing a leafy canopy, but reading the subtle scars left on a barren, windswept landscape. The Sahara seems like an empty, timeless void, but satellite imagery is proving it was once a vibrant crossroads of human connection. Using a combination of high-resolution visual cameras and radar that can penetrate the dry sand, researchers have begun to trace the ghostly network of ancient caravan routes that constituted the trans-Saharan trade. These are not paved Roman roads, but rather the accumulated paths of countless camels and merchants moving between the Mediterranean coast and sub-Saharan Africa. From space, these routes appear as faint, parallel tracks, sometimes converging at the locations of long-vanished oasis settlements. The satellites can detect the remains of these settlements' disturbances in the soil, the outlines of stone buildings, allowing archaeologists to pinpoint where caravans stop to rest, trade, and replenish their water supply. This has allowed them to map the flow of gold, salt, and ivory with unprecedented accuracy, turning the Sahara from a blank space on the historical map into a detailed diagram of intercultural exchange that linked the empires of West Africa with the classical world of the Mediterranean. The reach of this technology extends even to the most remote and challenging environments on Earth. In the dense, remote Petén region of Guatemala, LiDAR has performed a similar magic to that in Cambodia, revealing the true scale of the Maya civilization. For generations, archaeologists had painstakingly mapped Maya sites on foot, cutting through nearly impenetrable jungle to find individual pyramids and palaces. The LiDAR survey, however, provided a view they could never have achieved from the ground. It revealed that what were thought to be isolated city-states were, in fact, parts of a vast, interconnected, and constantly warring network of kingdoms. The data showed extensive systems of terracing and irrigation for agriculture, proving the Maya supported much larger populations than previously believed. Most astonishingly, the lasers uncovered massive, previously unknown defensive fortifications, ramparts, watchtowers, and complex earthworks, painting a picture of a civilization not of peaceful stargazers, but of powerful, competing states engaged in large-scale, organized warfare. This single dataset has forced a complete revision of Maya history, showing a society far more populous, interconnected, and militarily complex than we ever imagined. These global discoveries share a common, profound implication. We have been drastically underestimating the scale and ambition of past societies. From the jungles of Cambodia and Guatemala to the deserts of the Sahara and the fields of Britain, the pattern is the same. The visible, monumental ruins we have long studied, the temples, the Great Walls, the pyramids, were merely the tips of vast societal icebergs. They were the ceremonial and administrative cores of sprawling, densely populated, and highly engineered landscapes that have been rendered invisible by time, climate, and vegetation. Satellite archaeology is finally allowing us to see the full organism, not just the skeleton. It reveals the farms that fed the cities, the roads that connected them, and the homes of the millions of ordinary people who built the civilization. This forces a fundamental shift in our understanding of the ancient world. We can no longer think in terms of isolated monuments or city-states. We must now think in terms of vast, integrated territories, managed with a sophistication that rivals our own. The technology is giving a voice not just to kings and emperors, but to the farmers, traders, and laborers whose collective effort shaped our world, reminding us that history is written across the entire face of the planet, if only we learn how to look. This incredible journey from satellite imagery to geophysical survey gives us a beautifully detailed blueprint of a villa's foundations, but it still leaves one crucial aspect to our imagination. What did it actually feel like to stand inside one of these grand homes? This is the final frontier of digital archaeology, where data transforms into experience, and where we move from observing the past to virtually inhabiting it. The same laser scans and survey points that map buried walls are now being used to construct stunningly accurate three-dimensional models and fully immersive virtual reality reconstruction. This isn't just computer-generated guesswork. It's a rigorous, evidence-based process of digital resurrection, allowing us to cross a threshold that has been closed for 16 centuries and finally walk through the front door of a Roman villa, experiencing its colors, its scale, and its atmosphere firsthand. The entire process begins with the very same datasets we've been exploring. The precise ground plans generated by magnetometry provide the digital architect's floor plan. The LiDAR scans of the surrounding landscape ensure the virtual villa sits correctly in its topographical context, nestled into its specific valley or positioned on its hillside exactly as it was. But the real magic happens when excavation data enters the picture. The fragments of painted wall plaster recovered from the soil aren't just cataloged and stored away. They are meticulously analyzed using techniques like microscopic examination and pigment analysis. This tells the digital artists the exact colors and styles used in each room, whether the walls were deep Pompeian red, vibrant yellow, or decorated with delicate floral friezes. A single chunk of collapsed mosaic floor, even if it's shattered, provides the pattern and the color palette needed to digitally reconstruct the entire pavement by virtual tile. This is where the hard science of archaeology merges with informed interpretation to rebuild the third dimension. We know the height of Roman doors and windows from surviving structures across the empire. We understand their roofing techniques from the patterns of collapsed tile found in excavations. The discovery of column bases tells the modelers the height and style of the colonnades that once surrounded a courtyard. The crucial evidence for a second story often comes from the sheer volume of wall plaster and roof tile found in demolition layers, far more than would be needed for a single-story building. This painstaking, evidence-led approach ensures that every virtual wall, every column, and every roof tile in the model is grounded in archaeological reality, creating a reconstruction that is as historically credible as it is visually breathtaking. But the goal isn't just to create a static, soulless model. The most advanced projects aim to simulate the very experience of being there, to engage all the senses and convey the atmosphere of a lived-in space. Imagine putting on a VR headset and finding yourself standing in the grand reception room of a villa like Chedworth. You can look up and see the morning light, calculated for the correct latitude and season, streaming through a high window, catching the dust motes in the air. You can turn and see the intricate mosaic of the four seasons gleaming on the floor at your feet, its colors restored to their original, brilliant vibrancy. You can virtually walk over to the wall and examine the painted frescoes up close, seeing the brushstrokes and the subtle shading that would have been invisible from across the room. This level of immersion transforms our understanding from an intellectual exercise into an emotional and sensory one. These reconstructions also allow us to test historical hypotheses in a way that was previously impossible. How did sound travel through these spaces? An acoustic model can be layered onto the 3D structure to understand how conversations would have carried in a dining room during a feast, or how the sounds of the bathhouse complex would have echoed. Did a particular room have a specific religious or ritual function? By populating the space with virtual objects based on finds from similar sites, a small altar here, a distinctive lamp there, we can experiment with different configurations and uses. We can animate the environment, showing the hypocaust system in operation with virtual smoke and heat haze rising through the floor, or illustrating how water would have flowed through the bathhouse's complex plumbing. This turns the model into a dynamic laboratory for exploring the daily rhythms and practical realities of Roman life. The impact of this technology on public engagement and education is nothing short of revolutionary. For many people, reading about a hypocaust system or looking at a photograph of a mosaic fragment is an abstract exercise, but to virtually stand in a heated room and look down through a transparent floor at the fiery furnace and the pillars below is to understand Roman engineering on a visceral level. Museums and heritage sites are now deploying these VR experiences alongside the actual ruins, allowing visitors to bridge the gap between the broken foundations they see before them and the stunning completeness of the original structure. A family can stand in the shell of a ruined bathhouse and then in a headset to see the vaulted ceilings, the steaming pools, and the painted walls restored around them, making the past instantly comprehensible and profoundly exciting. Furthermore, these digital reconstructions are becoming invaluable preservation tools in their own right. They create a perfect, permanent record of a site at a specific moment in time, capturing every detail before the inevitable processes of erosion and decay take their toll. Should a section of a wall collapse or a mosaic deteriorate further, the high-resolution 3D model remains as a pristine digital archive, which can also be used to guide future conservation efforts with millimeter precision. In a very real sense, this technology allows us to freeze time, preserving these fragile sites not just as data points on a map, but as living, breathing virtual spaces that can be explored and studied by generations to come, long after the original stones may have faded. This digital resurrection represents the culmination of the entire archaeological process we followed from the satellite's distant view, to the geophysical survey's detailed plan, to the excavator's trowel uncovering artifacts, and finally, to the virtual model that weaves all these threads back together into a coherent, immersive whole. It closes the loop, transforming the silent, two-dimensional blueprints revealed from space into a vibrant, three-dimensional world we can step inside. It is the ultimate act of historical storytelling, allowing us not just to learn about the Romans in Britain, but to momentarily share their space, to comprehend their aesthetic vision, and to feel the grandeur of their ambition, all from a headset in our own living room. It is the closest we will ever come to opening a door through time. So, as our journey comes to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on the extraordinary path we've traveled. We began by looking down from the silent, orbiting eyes of satellites, seeing nothing but the familiar patchwork of the English countryside. But by learning to read the secret language of the land, the subtle variations in plant health, the laser-precise contours of the ground, and the magnetic whispers of buried stone, we watched that quiet landscape transform. What was once thought to be a sparsely populated frontier of the Roman Empire has been utterly reimagined. It is no longer a story of a few scattered forts and towns connected by lonely roads. Instead, we now see a province teeming with life, a densely populated and intricately managed landscape, where every rolling hill and river valley was dotted with productive villas, bustling farmsteads, and thriving local industries. This is the true legacy of satellite archaeology. It hasn't just added more pins to a map, it has given us an entirely new map, revealing a Britain that was profoundly and successfully Roman, integrated into the economic and cultural heart of the empire in a way we could only dream of understanding just a few decades ago. This revolution in perspective forces us to confront a humbling and exciting truth. We have only just begun to scratch the surface. For every villa like Chedworth that we can walk through, there are dozens, perhaps hundreds, of other complexes whose stories remain locked in the earth, known only as ghostly outlines on a computer screen. Each one is a sealed chapter in the great, unfinished book of our history, holding secrets about the people who live there, their beliefs, their daily struggles, and their dreams. The sheer scale of what remains undiscovered is both a challenge and an incredible promise. It means that the narrative of Roman Britain is not a static, completed text, but a living, breathing story that is being rewritten with every new flight of an aircraft, every new satellite pass, and every dry summer that causes the past to bloom in the field. The work is far from over. In many ways, the most thrilling discoveries are still ahead of us, waiting for the right combination of technology, patience, and a curious mind to bring them into the light. This is where the story truly comes full circle, and where you, the viewer, can become a part of it. The next time you find yourself driving through the countryside, or even just looking at a field from a train window, I encourage you to pause and really see it. Look past the obvious beauty of the green grass and the grazing sheep. Try to see the landscape as a vast, open-air museum, a parchment on which generations have written their stories. That gentle, almost imperceptible rise in the field might be the buried wall of a Roman barn. That slightly different shade of green in the wheat could be tracing the outline of a long-forgotten temple. The knowledge that this hidden world exists all around us transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. It invites us all to become detectives of the past, to cultivate a sense of wonder about the ground beneath our feet and the countless lives it has supported. And this sense of wonder can translate into tangible action. You don't need a degree in archaeology to make a difference. You can support the organizations and universities that are on the front lines of this research, often operating on limited budgets. You can advocate for the protection of our shared heritage, ensuring that these fragile, non-renewable resources are valued and conserved for future generations. You can even become a citizen scientist yourself, joining online projects that allow you to scan satellite imagery from your own home, helping professionals sift through mountains of data to find the next great discovery. Every pair of eyes adds to the effort. Your curiosity, your interest, and your support are the most powerful tools we have to ensure that this conversation between the present and the past continues. Ultimately, the story of satellite archaeology and the lost villas of Roman Britain is more than a tale of technological triumph. It is a profound reminder of the resilience of human memory and the enduring marks we leave upon the earth. It teaches us that history is not just found in history books, but is woven into the very fabric of the land we walk on every day. The Romans who built these grand estates are long gone, but their legacy is still there, sleeping just beneath the soil, waiting for its story to be told. So keep looking, keep wondering, and keep asking questions. The landscape is whispering its secrets. All we have to do is learn how to listen.